The first impressions of humanity by the Valtari collective were decidedly negative. Their scout ships had observed Earth for decades, watching as humans waged war against one another with increasing technological sophistication. Their reports categorized humans as dangerously aggressive primates with access to nuclear weapons and unsuitable for diplomatic contact. Admiral Cora stood on the observation deck of the flagship Horizon Seeker, her four eyes blinking in sequence as she reviewed the latest reports. The humans had detected their presence at last, an inevitability, but one she had hoped to delay until the High Council made their final decision. "They've deployed their primitive fighters," reported her second-in-command Vex. 20 aircraft approaching our position. "Hold position," Cora ordered. "No defensive measures, let's see what they do." The Valtari had encountered many species across the galaxy. Some were peaceful, some violent, but none quite as paradoxical as humans. Their capacity for violence was matched only by their artistic achievement. They slaughtered one another over imaginary boundaries while composing symphonies that moved even alien hearts. "They're establishing a communication channel," Vex announced, surprise evident in his voice. "They're inviting us to land." Cora's upper eyes narrowed. It could be a trap. Perhaps, but the message came from a unified Earth authority, not one of their fractured nation-states. That's unexpected progress. For 3 cycles, the High Council had debated whether to initiate contact or simply bypass the Sol system entirely. The faction opposing contact had compelling evidence: thousands of years of human warfare, environmental destruction, and a troubling tendency to shoot first and ask questions later. "Prepare a delegation," Cora decided. "I will lead it myself." The landing site chosen by the humans was a flat plain in a neutral territory they called New Zealand. As the Valtari shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, Cora felt an unfamiliar sensation: anxiety. Her species prided themselves on logical decision-making and emotional control, but something about humans triggered a primal caution. The human delegation waited beside a hastily constructed landing pad. They were smaller than Cora had expected, fragile-looking with their thin skin and lack of natural armor. Yet their military units stood alert around the perimeter, weapons visible though not aimed directly at the shuttle. "They're cautious but not overtly hostile," observed Tren, the expedition's xenopsychologist. "Notice how they've positioned themselves, open enough to appear welcoming, but with clear defensive capabilities." The first human to approach was called Captain Gray, a male with silver-streaked hair who extended a hand in what their research identified as a greeting gesture. "Welcome to Earth," he said simply. Cora did not take his hand, following protocol for first contact. "We come without hostile intent," she responded, the translation device around her neck converting her harmonic speech into human English. "Yet, you've been watching us for quite some time without introducing yourselves," Gray replied, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "We needed to understand if you were ready." Gray's expression hardened. "Ready? Or safe?" Cora's 4 eyes blinked in. Rapid succession, a sign of discomfort her species could not easily hide. "Both," she admitted. "And your conclusion?" Before Cora could answer, alarms blared from the human compound. Gray's communication device crackled with urgent voices. "Multiple bogies incoming," a voice reported. "Not ours. Not theirs." Cora felt her blood cool. "The Krell," she whispered. "They've followed us." The sky darkened as massive ships pierced the clouds, black, angular vessels that made the Valtari ships look elegant by comparison. The Krell had been expanding aggressively across this sector, consuming resources and occasionally entire species. Gray looked up, then back at Cora, suspicion clear on his face. "Friends of yours?" "Enemies," Cora corrected. "To both our peoples." The first Krell missiles hit the ground a kilometer away, shaking the earth beneath their feet. First contact had just become first combat. The Krell attack changed everything. What was supposed to be a careful, measured first contact became a desperate alliance forged in fire. Captain Gray didn't hesitate. "Get your people back to your ship," he ordered Cora. "Our forces will cover you." "No," Cora replied, surprising herself. "The Krell tracked us here. This is our responsibility." Overhead, The human fighters engaged the Krell ships in a dance that seemed hopelessly one-sided. Human aircraft, primitive by galactic standards, darted between energy beams that sliced through the sky. "They're buying us time," Gray explained, watching a fighter explode. "We need to coordinate our defense." Within hours, an emergency command center was established. Human military leaders gathered around holographic displays provided by the Valtari, trying to comprehend the scale of the threat they faced. "The Krell are resource harvesters," Cora explained. "They strip planets bare and move on. They don't negotiate or accept surrender." Admiral West, a stern-faced human woman, studied the Krell ship schematics. "Then we fight. But we need to understand their capabilities." The Valtari provided what intelligence they had, while humans offered what they'd always excelled at: improvisation under pressure. It was a strange collaboration, born of necessity rather than trust. The first real battle came 3 days later when Krell landing craft began deploying ground forces around major population centers. The Valtari had superior technology, but limited numbers. Humans had numbers and a ferocity that surprised even Cora. At the front lines outside what humans called Washington, D.C., Cora witnessed humanity's warfare capabilities firsthand. They fought with a determination that bordered on madness, holding positions long after logic dictated retreat. During one particularly brutal exchange, a human squad became pinned down by Krell heavy weapons. The Valtari tactical computer calculated a 97% casualty rate if they remained. "They must withdraw," Cora insisted over the communication channel. "Negative," came the sergeant's reply. "There are civilians behind us. We hold." Cora watched through surveillance drones as the squad was systematically reduced. Yet for each fallen human, the others fought harder, dragging wounded comrades to cover while maintaining fire. When Valtari reinforcements finally arrived, only 2 humans from the original 12 remained alive. One of them, barely conscious, still fired his weapon at approaching Krell. "Why didn't you retreat?" Cora asked the sergeant later in the medical facility. The human's face, half bandaged, turned toward her. "Would you have?" The question lingered in Cora's mind. The Valtari would have calculated the optimal solution, which almost certainly would not have included near-total unit sacrifice. As weeks passed, the conflict intensified. The Krell deployed more ships, clearly identifying Earth as a priority target. Its resources, particularly its water and biodiversity, made it valuable. But the combined human-Valtari resistance held firm. Humans adapted quickly to alien technology, incorporating Valtari energy weapons into their defense systems. The Valtari, meanwhile, learned from human tactical flexibility. In her private log, Cora noted, "Humans fight differently than any species we've encountered. They don't calculate acceptable losses. They simply decide what must be protected and pay whatever cost necessary. It is simultaneously their greatest weakness and their most formidable strength." After a particularly costly battle in which humans retook a Krell landing zone, Cora walked the battlefield alongside Captain Gray. The ground was littered with human and Krell dead. "So much waste," she said quietly. Gray's face was grim. "Not waste. Sacrifice." Cora was beginning to understand the distinction, though it troubled her deeply. The Valtari valued life, all life, as the universe's most precious resource. Humans seemed to value certain principles above even their own survival. As they prepared for the next Krell assault, Cora couldn't help wondering, was this capacity for self-sacrifice nobility or savagery? The tide turned during the Battle of Lunar Orbit. For 2 months, the combined human-Valtari forces had been fighting defensive actions, losing ground but buying time. Now they were ready to strike back. The plan was audacious, perhaps suicidally. So, human stealth submarines, retrofitted with Valtari technology, would launch a coordinated attack on the Krell command ship from Earth's oceans. Meanwhile, a joint strike force would assault from the dark side of the moon. This plan relies heavily on untested technology integration, Vex pointed out during the final strategy session, and demands perfect timing, added Admiral West. If either attack force is detected early, both will be destroyed. Captain Gray, now promoted to colonel, studied the holographic battle plan. It's our best chance to take out their command structure. Cora had learned to read human expressions well enough to see the doubt behind Gray's confidence. The casualty. Projections are significant, she said carefully. We understand the cost, Gray replied. His eyes met hers. Do your people. The subtle challenge wasn't lost on Cora. Throughout the conflict, the Valtari had been reluctant to place their personnel in high-risk scenarios, preferring to contribute technology and orbital support. Humans had done most of the dying. I will personally lead the lunar assault, Cora announced, surprising even her own officers. The mission launched under the cover of a massive electromagnetic disturbance created by Valtari technology. Cora, aboard the lead assault craft with a mixed crew of humans and Valtari, watched Earth recede below them. A blue marble swirled with the smoke of ongoing battles. Beside her, a human lieutenant named Marcus checked his weapon for the 5th time. First time in space? Cora asked. First time anywhere except Earth, he admitted. Joined the Marines 3 years ago to pay for college. Never expected to end up fighting alongside aliens on the moon. Against aliens, Cora corrected gently. Marcus smiled. Some aliens. Not all. The assault began with terrifying precision. The submarine-launched missiles struck the Krell command ship seconds before the lunar force opened fire. For precious minutes, confusion reigned among the Krell fleet, but the Krell recovered quickly. As Cora's forces pushed toward the crippled command ship, enemy reinforcements swarmed to its defense. We're not going to break through, Vex reported, green blood seeping from a wound on his upper arm. We don't need to, Gray reminded him over the communication channel. We just need to hold their attention. The submarines had successfully deployed their primary weapons, infiltration pods containing elite human and Valtari operatives who were now inside the Krell vessel, fighting their way to its core. Cora's assault team suffered mounting casualties. The narrow corridors of their target station became slaughterhouses as Krell defenders counterattacked with desperate ferocity. Fall back to position Epsilon, Cora ordered as another explosion rocked the corridor. 3 more of her soldiers fell, 1 human and 2 Valtari. Lieutenant Marcus dragged a wounded Valtari engineer behind cover. We're not leaving them, he shouted over the chaos, gesturing to their fallen comrades. They're dead, Cora responded, the Valtari pragmatism asserting itself. Marcus shook his head. We don't know that, and even if they are, we're bringing them home. Despite the immediate danger, Marcus and 2 other humans darted out to retrieve the fallen. 1 was shot in the process, adding to their burden rather than reducing it. Cora didn't understand. Logically, every second spent recovering the dead or mortally wounded reduced their mission success probability. Yet watching these humans risk everything to retrieve their comrades, both human and Valtari, stirred something deep within her. When the infiltration team finally succeeded in planting their charges at the Krell command ship's power core, the resulting explosion rippled through the enemy fleet. Ships lost coordination, weapon systems failed, and for the first time the invaders began to retreat. The victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 200 who had participated in the lunar assault, fewer than 80 survived. The submarine, crews were lost entirely. As the battered assault craft returned to Earth, Cora moved among the wounded. The humans had insisted on bringing back every body they could recover. In Valtari culture, the physical shell was considered unimportant after death. The essence of a person lived on in the collective memory. Why risk more lives to recover the dead? She finally asked Gray. Because we're human, he answered simply. And now, so are they. 6 months into the war, Earth resembled a battlefield from ancient myths. Sprawling Krell mining operations scarred continents, while orbital debris from destroyed ships created new artificial meteor showers each night. But the Krell were withdrawing. The destruction of their command ship had fractured their hierarchy, and the cost of subjugating Earth had proven higher than anticipated. What should have been a standard harvesting operation had become a war of attrition they hadn't planned for. In the temporary headquarters established beneath the Rocky Mountains, the joint Human-Valtari Command was planning the final push to drive the invaders from Earth entirely. Their remaining forces are consolidating around their primary extraction facility in the Siberian plains, explained General Rivera, pointing to the holographic map. If we can eliminate that foothold, we believe they'll abandon the campaign. Cora studied the layout. The facility was massive. a sprawling complex of refineries and processing plants, where Krell ships ferried Earth's resources off-planet. The defense systems are formidable, she noted. A direct assault would be costly. We're not suggesting a direct assault, Rivera replied. We're suggesting a nuclear strike. The room fell silent. The Valtari delegation exchanged troubled glances. You wish to use atomic weapons on your own planet? Vex asked, his tone making clear how unthinkable this was to the Valtari. It's not our first choice, Admiral West clarified, but conventional forces would suffer catastrophic casualties. The radiation can be contained with your shield technology, and the area is already rendered uninhabitable by Krell mining. Debates raged for hours. The Valtari, despite being allies, were horrified by the human willingness to poison their own world to win. Humans saw it as a necessary sacrifice. In the end, they compromised. A smaller tactical nuclear device would breach the facility's outer defenses, allowing a joint strike team to infiltrate and disable the operation from within. The mission was designated Operation Sunset, a name that carried ominous connotations for many of the humans, but had to be explained to the Valtari. Colonel Gray would lead the ground assault with Cora commanding the support fleet. As they prepared, Cora noticed a ritual taking place among the human soldiers. They were writing letters. What are they doing? She asked Marcus, who had survived the lunar assault and become something of a cultural interpreter. Writing to their families, he explained. Just in case. In case of what? Marcus gave her a look that suggested the answer should be obvious. In case they don't come back. The concept was alien to Cora. Valtari communicated important matters in person, or not. At all. The idea of leaving words behind seemed insufficient. Would you like to write one? Marcus offered her a small notebook. Actual paper. A rarity. I have no family on Earth, Cora reminded him. Write to someone back home then. Or write to history. That's what I do. Cora took the notebook but didn't know what to write. What could she say about this strange war on this strange planet with these contradictory humans? The attack began at dawn. The nuclear device performed as intended, creating a breach in the Krell defenses. Human and Valtari dropships descended through the gap, deploying ground forces directly into the heart of the enemy stronghold. The battle was chaos from the first moment. Krell defenders fought with the desperation of cornered animals. Human and Valtari forces pushed forward room by room, level by level, suffering heavy losses. From her command ship, Cora watched the tactical display with growing concern. The strike team was pinned down 3 levels from their objective. Send. In the reserves, she ordered. All reserves are deployed, Vex reported grimly. They're not going to reach the central control. Cora made a decision. Prepare my shuttle. I'm going down. Admiral, that's against protocol. This whole war is against protocol, she cut him off. I won't watch from orbit while they die below. By the time Cora reached the facility, the situation had deteriorated further. She found Gray coordinating a defensive position, blood seeping from a wound in his side. The central control is through. Oh, that corridor, he told her. But they've got heavy weapons covering every approach. Cora assessed their remaining forces. Too few to mount another assault. Too committed to retreat. I have an idea, she said finally. But it violates every principle. My people hold sacred, Gray managed a pained smile. Welcome to humanity, Admiral. Cora's plan was as simple as it was desperate. The Valtari environmental suits contained emergency power cells designed to sustain life support for up to 72 hours, if the main systems failed. If overloaded simultaneously, these cells could create an explosion powerful enough to breach the Krell defenses. It would mean sacrificing at least 6 of our people, she explained to Gray. He shook his head. We use remote detonators. The Krell will detect and jam them, Cora countered. It needs to be manual activation. They stared at each other. 2 commanders from worlds apart, now facing the same impossible choice. I'll do it, Cora said finally. No, Gray grabbed her arm. You're too valuable. The Alliance needs you. This was my suggestion, my responsibility. Their argument was interrupted by Marcus. I've got 6 volunteers, he reported. 3 human, 3 Valtari. Cora felt something cold settle in her chest. Who? The volunteers stood together, an unlikely group united by purpose. Among them was Tren, the xenopsychologist who had been studying humans since first contact. "Why?" Cora asked them. A human woman named Diaz answered. "Because we can end this. Today." The Valtari volunteers were harder for Cora to understand. Their culture didn't glorify self-sacrifice the way humans sometimes seem to. "We have learned from them," Tren explained quietly. "Not to die senselessly, but to recognize when the many outweigh the few." The plan proceeded with grim efficiency. The volunteers would approach from different access points, converging on the central control. Their combined explosions would eliminate Krell resistance and destroy the facility's core. As the volunteers prepared to depart, humans throughout the command post performed a gesture Cora had seen before. A hand pressed to the heart, then extended outward. A salute of honor. The Valtari present, witnessing this, created their own gesture in response. 4 fingers spread to represent their eyes, then closed to signify seeing truth. It was the first spontaneous cultural exchange between their species. The attack commenced. Through helmet cameras, the command post watched the volunteers fight their way toward their targets. One by one, they fell out of communication as they penetrated deeper into enemy territory. Diaz was the first to reach her position. "Ready," her voice crackled through static. Then Tren. "In position." 2 more confirmations followed. 2 remained. Silent, presumed lost. "On my mark," Gray ordered. 3, 2, 1. The facility imploded spectacularly as the power cells detonated in sequence. The Krell defense grid collapsed, and their remaining ships began lifting off immediately, abandoning equipment, resources, and even some of their own troops in their haste to escape. The victory should have felt triumphant. The Krell were retreating not just from Siberia but from Earth entirely. Sensors confirmed their fleet was setting course out of the solar system. Yet Cora felt hollow as she watched humans embrace one another, some crying, others laughing in relief. The Valtari stood apart, subdued in their victory. "We should honor them," Cora said to Gray. "The volunteers." "We will," he promised. "We'll build memorials, write their names in history." "That's not enough," Cora insisted. "I need to understand why they did it. Why any of you do it." Gray considered her for a long moment. "Come with me tomorrow. There's something you should see." The next day, despite urgent reconstruction duties, Gray took Cora to what humans called a cemetery, a concept the Valtari found bizarre. While they preserved memories of the deceased, humans preserved their physical remains. The cemetery they visited contained rows of identical white stones marking graves of military personnel. Gray led her to a small ceremony taking place beneath a flag flying at half-mast. "Diaz's funeral," he explained quietly. "Her family requested a military service." Cora watched, fascinated, as humans in formal uniforms performed ritual movements with a cloth-draped box. "Her body isn't inside," Gray told her. "There wasn't anything to recover, but they needed this." "Why?" "To say goodbye. To grieve." The concept of grief was not unknown to the Valtari, but its expression was private, controlled. This public display, the tears, the rituals, the raw emotion, was alien to Cora. Yet as she watched, she began to understand something fundamental about humanity that had eluded her. 3 days after the victory at the Siberian facility, Cora received summons from the Valtari High Council. A delegation had arrived from the homeworld to assess the situation on Earth and determine next steps. The meeting took place aboard the Horizon Seeker, now scarred from battles but still impressive. Elder Milo, the council representative, listened silently as Cora recounted the war. "You collaborated with humans beyond the parameters of necessity," he noted when she finished. His tone made the statement an accusation. "We adapted to circumstances," Cora replied carefully. "You adopted their methods," Milo corrected. "Including tactical sacrifices our culture has deemed inefficient for generations." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. Colonel Gray requested permission to bring a human delegation aboard. Unusually, he specified these were not military or political leaders, but civilians. Elder Milo was intrigued, enough to grant the request. Hours later, Gray arrived with 12 humans of varying ages. Each carried something: flowers, photographs, small personal items. These are family members of the volunteers who died at the Siberian facility. Gray explained. They asked to meet the aliens who fought alongside their loved ones. The meeting was unlike anything in Valtari diplomatic protocol. The humans approached the aliens without fear, some extending hands in greeting, others simply nodding respectfully. A middle-aged woman stood before Cora. "You're the Admiral," she said. "The one my daughter mentioned in her letters." Cora recognized her features, similar to Diaz. "Yes. Your daughter was exceptionally brave." "Maria always was stubborn," the woman replied, a strange mixture of pride and pain in her voice. "She wrote that you aliens didn't understand why humans would sacrifice themselves. Do you understand now?" The directness of the question caught Cora off guard. "I'm still learning," she admitted. The woman nodded as if this answer satisfied her. She held out a small object, a pendant on a chain. This was hers. She would want you to have it. Cora accepted the offering, bewildered. "I did not know your daughter well. But you fought together. In our culture, that means something." Throughout the chamber, similar exchanges were happening. Humans presenting Valtari officers with mementos, sharing stories of the fallen, some weeping openly yet continuing to speak. Elder Milo observed it all with increasing fascination. "What is this ritual?" he finally asked Gray. "Grief," Gray answered, simply. "Shared grief. They mourn our dead alongside their own," Vex noted, holding a photograph given to him by a young human whose brother had died in the lunar assault. "Of course," said an elderly human man. "They died together. Why wouldn't we grieve together?" Later, after the humans had departed, Elder Milo convened an emergency session with Cora and her senior officers. "This behavior contradicts our understanding of human nature," he stated. "Our observations showed them to be tribal, aggressive, quick to violence, yet they grieve even for enemies." "Not enemies," Cora corrected. "They considered the Krell enemies. They consider us something else." "Allies?" suggested Vex. Cora thought about the pendant she now carried, the stories she had heard from the families, the strange mixture of sorrow and pride they displayed. "Friends," she said finally. "They consider us friends." The word hung in the air, foreign and profound. Elder Milo's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession. "The Council must reevaluate our assessment of humanity. This capacity for emotional connection with alien species was unanticipated." That night, Cora stood alone on the observation deck, watching Earth rotate below. The blue planet was scarred now, bearing the wounds of war, yet somehow more beautiful to her than when they had first arrived. She thought about Tren, who had studied humans so carefully and then sacrificed himself alongside them. In his final transmission, he had said something Cora was still trying to understand. "They've taught me that understanding isn't enough. One must also feel." The pendant Diaz's mother had given her felt heavy in her hand, a small silver disc etched with unfamiliar symbols. "It's her patron saint," Gray's voice came from behind her. "Saint Barbara, protector of those who face danger." Cora hadn't heard him enter. "Why do humans create such attachments to physical objects?" "The person is gone." Gray joined her at the viewport. "Not entirely gone, not as long as someone remembers. The objects help us remember." "Valtari remember perfectly without aids," Cora pointed out. "Maybe. But do you feel the memories the same way?" The question struck at something Cora had been struggling with since watching the funeral. Valtari experienced emotions, certainly, but they were considered distractions, biological impulses to be acknowledged and managed, not indulged. Humans seemed to do the opposite. They embraced emotion, allowed it to guide them, even celebrated it. "Your people are nothing like our report suggested," she admitted. Gray smiled faintly. "Neither are yours." 1 year after the Krell retreat, Earth was healing. The alliance between humans and the Valtari had evolved from military necessity to genuine cooperation. Valtari technology accelerated the cleanup of Krell mining sites, while human adaptability led to innovative applications of alien science. The Horizon Seeker remained in orbit, now serving as an embassy and research center. Cora, appointed as permanent ambassador to Earth, had developed a deeper understanding of humanity than any Valtari before her. Today marked the dedication of the Memorial Garden, a project she had initiated with unexpected support from the High Council. Located on neutral ground in New Zealand, the same site where first contact had occurred, it honored all who had fallen in the Krell War. As Cora walked the winding paths with Gray, now General Gray, she marveled at the human approach to remembrance. Each fallen soldier, regardless of species, was represented by a living tree native to their homeworld. Earth oaks and maples stood alongside transplanted Valtari silver leaves, creating a forest that would grow for centuries. "It's beautiful," she told Gray. "Different from our memorials." "How do the Valtari honor their dead?" he asked. "We record their achievements in the Great Archive. Their knowledge and experiences become part of our collective wisdom." "Practical," Gray nodded. "Preserving what made them useful." "You disapprove?" Gray considered. "Not disapprove, but it seems incomplete." They paused before a small circular plaza at the garden's center. Here stood statues of the 6 volunteers who had sacrificed themselves at the Siberian facility. 3 humans, 3 Valtari, immortalized in stone. What struck Cora most was the craftsmanship. The human sculptor had captured not just the physical appearance of each subject, but something of their essence. Tren's statue showed him with head slightly tilted, the posture he adopted when asking questions. Diaz stood with the subtle smirk that often played at her lips. How did the artist know them so well? She wondered aloud. She interviewed everyone who knew them, Gray explained. Collected stories, pictures, videos, spent months understanding who they were, not just what they looked like. Around them, hundreds of humans and dozens of Valtari gathered for the dedication ceremony. The Valtari present were mostly those who had fought alongside humans, now changed by the experience. Elder Milo approached, accompanied by several council members who had made the long journey from the homeworld. "Ambassador Cora," he greeted her formally. "This memorial is not what I expected." "Too human?" she asked directly. "Perhaps," he admitted. "Yet I find I cannot disapprove. It has an emotional resonance our archives lack." The ceremony itself blended traditions from both worlds. Humans placed flowers and personal items near the memorials of fallen friends. Valtari performed the memory recitation, speaking aloud the names and deeds of the honored dead. When Cora's turn came to speak, she found herself struggling for words, a rare occurrence for a Valtari diplomat. "When we first observed humanity," she began, "we saw only your capacity for violence. We categorized you as primitive, dangerous, possibly unsalvageable." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "We were wrong," Cora continued. "Not because humans aren't capable of violence. You are, terrifyingly so. We were wrong because we failed to understand the counterbalance to that violence, your capacity for connection." She touched the pendant she still wore, Diaz's saint. "Valtari believe in preservation of life as the highest virtue. We avoid risk, calculate acceptable losses, and make decisions accordingly. Humans taught us something different, that sometimes the willing sacrifice of the few for the many isn't just logical, it's noble." Gray stood silently beside her, his expression unreadable. "But the greatest lesson came after the battle," Cora said. "When you showed us how you grieve, not just for your own, but for all. Even I've learned, for enemies when circumstances allow." She gestured to a small section of the garden where several Krell plants grew, a controversial addition that both governments had eventually approved. "The Krell came as conquerors, yet you commemorate even their losses. This capacity to recognize the sentience in your enemies, to acknowledge their value even as you fight them. This is what makes humans not savages, but something far more complex, far more valuable to the galaxy." As the ceremony concluded, Cora noticed Gray discreetly wiping his eyes. "Are you well?" she asked with concern. "Just thinking," he replied, "about how differently this all could have gone. If the Krell hadn't attacked during first contact, humans and Valtari might have remained distant, suspicious allies at best. Instead, they had fought together, died together, and learned to grieve together." Later, as dusk fell over the memorial garden, Cora found herself alone among the trees. She stopped before Tren's memorial and performed a gesture she had never thought to make before arriving on Earth. She placed her hand on the stone, feeling its coolness against her palm. "I understand now," she said quietly to her fallen friend. "What you meant in your final message. Understanding isn't enough. One must also feel." From the shadows, Elder Milo approached. "You've changed, Admiral." "Ambassador now," she corrected, gently. "And yes, Earth changes those who come here." "The Council is concerned about cultural contamination." Cora turned to face him fully. "They should be, but perhaps not in the way they think." "Explain." "The Valtari have evolved beyond many biological imperatives. We've engineered aggression and tribalism out of our society. But in doing so, we may have lost something valuable. The emotional connections that drive humans to such remarkable acts of courage and compassion." Milo considered this. "You believe we should become more like them?" "I believe we should learn from them as they learn from us. A synthesis rather than a contamination." Above them, stars emerged in the twilight sky. The same stars that had witnessed the first Krell ships arriving, the battles that followed. And now this moment of reflection. "The galaxy is larger and more dangerous than we knew," Cora said. "The Krell aren't the only threat out there. If we face the future together, Valtari wisdom and human heart, we will be stronger for it." Milo's 4 eyes blinked in the Valtari gesture of acknowledgement. "Perhaps you are right, Ambassador. Perhaps this is why we explore. Not just to find new worlds, but new perspectives." As they walked back toward the gathering, Cora felt the weight of Diaz's pendant against her chest. A human memento, carrying meaning beyond its physical form, just like the trees in this garden, the statues in the plaza, and the memories preserved in both human hearts and Valtari archives. 2 approaches to remembrance, now growing together into something new, just as their civilizations were. As the first stars appeared overhead, humans and Valtari gathered together beneath alien trees on a once battleground, united not just by the memory of war, but by something far more profound, the shared experience of loss and the determination to honor it properly. In that garden of remembrance, under an Earth sky now watched by friendly alien eyes, the true revelation of humanity was complete. Not our capacity for violence that had first alarmed them, nor our resourcefulness that had later impressed them, but our ability to recognize the value of all life, even that which had stood against us. The Valtari had come expecting savages. They had found instead teachers of a lesson their advanced civilization had somehow missed along its path to the stars. The end.